Hi everyone, this is Jim. Well, here we are at last at the final round of my tournament, the U.S. Amateur West. In round 6, I'm facing a higher rated player again. So after 5 rounds, I'm at 2 points out of 5 games. So I'm half a point behind 50%. But I faced some pretty tough opposition, and I've got a higher rated opponent here. So if I win this game and get back to even, then I should probably pick up a few rating points. If I draw this game, I'll probably lose a few rating points. And then if I lose this game, I'll lose a bunch of rating points. So that's kind of what the stakes are at this point. I'm no longer in contention, haven't been for a while, for any of the prizes. I think after the second day when I lost those 2 games, that knocked me out of contention. But I'm playing for the fun of it, and also to not destroy my rating. And my opponent, his rating is 1897, so it's not so much higher that I'm really afraid of him. I'm playing for a win. I start off with d4. He goes knight f6. I go c4, and he goes knight c6. So this is the Black Knights Tango, or the Two Knights Tango. Joel Benjamin used to play this, and he says that it's an okay way for black to play. One idea is to try and lure white into pushing these pawns forward, and the knights hop around the board, but it just turns out in this particular case they're fairly nimble, and they don't get into any trouble, and white's pawns can get overextended. So I haven't studied this opening at all. That's all I know about it. But I thought one idea here might be to play e5 and try and turn this into some kind of a Budapest gambit at some point. I didn't want to move the pawns forward. That was what I remembered from listening to Joel Benjamin. So I played the move knight f3 here to clamp down on any potential e5 from black. And that turns out to be one of the top 2 moves here. Also knight c3 was playable there as well. They're both good moves for white. And then the normal way to continue here is with e6. That's the typical move in the opening book. My opponent played a rare move. It's in the book, but it's very rare. Played d5. And I think it's actually just a mistake. This is like the martial defense with a couple of extra knight moves stuck in. And I've already got this knight, the martial defense to the queen's gambit. And I've already got this knight on f3 controlling the e5 square, which is a key idea when you're playing against the martial defense. And so I took the pawn, just playing this like the martial defense, and that is the best move here. And now if he takes back with the knight, then I'm going to get to play e4, kicking the knight with tempo, and the knight has to retreat to some square. It's not like a Grinfeld where there's a target here on c3, because I haven't played knight c3. So I think the way I played this so far in the opening was good, getting this knight on f3 out first rather than the knight on c3. So anyway, he took with the queen. Now I developed knight c3, and he moved his queen back to d8. And that actually, at that point, we leave the opening book. In the opening book, the only move that was played at this point was queen to a5, which makes a lot of sense, pinning this pawn, pinning this knight, and maybe his knight can hop into e4 there and put some pressure on my knight. Of course, I can unpin with the bishop right away, so I don't think that amounts to very much. But after queen d8, it seems like white has nearly a winning advantage here with the move that I play. So what would you play in this position? Okay, I'm going to give the answer away. What I played, and I don't know if it's the only move here, but it's one of the best moves, is d5. And you might think this goes against what I said earlier about how black is trying to lure these pawns forward so he can counterattack them. But I also said, the knights hop around nimbly and find good squares. And the point is there's no good square for the knight. And I was surprised. I mean, I've been thinking about this. This is a novel position to me, but my opponent was moving very quickly, and he just dropped his knight back to b8, which I had calculated that was the only move possible. The problem is knight to b4 loses immediately to the queen check. The knight can't come back and block the check, so that just loses material. He could have tried, and I thought he might have tried knight to a5. Knight to a5 is not as clear. You still have the check, but then black has c6, defending the knight with the queen and blocking the check simultaneously with that one move. But then I realized, and I'd actually calculated this out before playing d5, because I didn't want to make a committal move like d5 before checking. I realized that this move b4 right here is really powerful. The knight has almost nowhere to go, right? It can't go back to those squares, can't come in here. So it has to go to c4. And when the knight goes to c4, it's left this c6 pawn undefended. So I can take, and if he takes back, then there's this queen takes with check, picking up the rook. Is that true? No, it picks up the knight. That's the problem. He can block with the bishop and defend the rook, but it picks up the knight. So this is big trouble for black. The chess engine gives b5 is the only way to survive. Queen takes b5 and then the knight to d6. And I've just won a couple of pawns over on the queen side, and black's position looks like a disaster in any case. So there's no move here other than knight back to b8. It's the only playable move. And the chess engine at this point is giving white a winning advantage. But the win is not simple. So by winning advantage, I mean +1. If you've got a score of +1 from the chess engine this early in the game, that usually means you can win this game with good play. Because usually you can find those moves to increase the pressure and convert it. But it's not necessarily easy. So I play good moves for a long time and keep up the pressure. But there is a point after about, let's see, how many moves is that? We're on move 6. From here to move 23, I do a good job of maintaining that +1 advantage. So start out just developing and putting a little pressure on his knight here. He goes g6. I go e4. And he goes h6, kicking my bishop. I don't want to trade pieces. I think it's good for me to keep material on. I've got the advantage in space, and so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try and develop my pieces to good active squares and take advantage of that extra space. So I just drop my bishop back here. He goes bishop g7. I go bishop c4. He goes bishop to g4. He's getting his pieces out, and he can of course force a trade of bishop for knight, but I think that helps me. That gives me the bishop pair, so it's kind of trading one advantage for another. It allows him to remove some of the material from the board, which maybe eases his cramping, but it gives me the bishop pair. And so this is still keeping that +1 advantage that I had from the opening. Let's see, he castled. I developed my bishop to f4. That's the other advantage of playing this h3 move. It forced the bishop to make a decision, and it also opened up this retreating square for my bishop. So if his knight goes to h5 there, for example, kicking my bishop, I can retreat right away. He plays knight bd7, getting his other knight in the game. I castle, and he goes knight back to e8. A funny move. But he has some ideas here. And through all of this, he's been playing very quickly, whereas I've been taking my time and carefully searching for the best move. And this is an interesting pawn structure I have here, where I've got the pawns on light squares, and I have to be aware of the weaknesses on the dark squares. He's going to try and blockade the center with his knights. Let's see. In this position, though, I'm still just putting my pieces on active squares. Rook A to c1. I'm thinking I will get some pressure against the c pawn here. And also it indirectly defends this bishop, which might come under fire. So, but I just retreat these two pieces out of the way, and I've got pretty good threat on c7 there. Although his knight retreat back to e8 has sort of defended c7 in advance. So kind of an interesting situation. He's got a really cramped looking position, but in all of this, the chess engine keeps that +1 evaluation, but it doesn't give a line that shows how to win. So there's no breakthrough here. It's just that black is worse here, and white has to keep maneuvering and looking for that breakthrough. Okay, so he played knight to e5, kicking my queen, and I dropped the queen back to e2. He was also hitting my loose bishop. So this is a decision. I wanted to keep the dark squared bishop on because these pawns are controlling the light squares, and I wanted to have this piece controlling the dark squares. So if he wants to take off that bishop, he can. I think that will still leave me in an excellent position. And in fact, he doesn't take it, and the chess engine doesn't recommend taking it either. He plays knight d6, setting up a blockade against my pawns here, and also threatening to win that bishop, so I drop it back. And now he plays a6. Maybe he's going to come forward on the queen side with b5. I went with queen e3 here. I had some ideas of maneuvering my queen over and putting some pressure, and also I wanted to create a little space for my knight to get over to the king side. I wanted to, open up the c file and also put some pressure on his king side. He played king to h7. Yeah, I was also attacking that pawn, so he defends it. And I go queen g3. Like I said, getting the queen over here, looking at his king side, and also now threatening to take his knight. So he dropped back with a knight. He went knight to d7. This also frees up my pawns so they can potentially move forward. So I go bishop c2 next. Taking a look at this pawn over here on the king side, maybe getting some ideas of sacrificing on g6. I need to get the knight in position. That'll take a couple of moves, but there are some ideas there. He goes rook c8, defending the c-pawn by another means, so he's still worried about that, and it was kind of keeping his knight tied down, that threat of taking on c7, although he did have knight to b4 as an idea, I guess. And here I play the move e5, and I think this is a good move. It's one of the top choices of the chess engine. It kind of keeps this bishop locked out of the game, and it asks him where he's going to put his pieces. He decided wherever he goes, he's going to suffer some pawn damage. He chose knight f5, which is actually one of the better moves, surprisingly. And I took that off. He takes back, and I figure it's worth giving up the bishop pair in order to damage the pawn structure around his king side. And now I played what I thought was the logical follow-up, knight to e2. So this is that move 23 that I mentioned. So knight to e2, with the idea of bringing the knight into the king side and just getting some king side attack going. Maybe I can lift the rook up and over too with the knight out of the way. So it has a logical justification, but it's overlooking one feature of the position, which is that when I pushed e5 forward, I left the d-pawn weak. And he has the move knight to b6 here, starting to go for a counterattack on the d-pawn. And let's see. Also at move 23, the time control is at move 40. I wanted to mention that already there is a noticeable amount of time pressure on me. I had to hurry up my decisions a little bit. And the reason is that he's been moving really quickly the whole time. So he's got more than an hour on his clock, whereas I'm down to, 20 to 30 minutes or so, which would normally be enough, but it's starting to get complicated here. And, I was spending a lot of time earlier trying to find those best and accurate moves. And I played accurate moves all the way through up to this point, but knight e2 is a slightly inaccurate move. And the other thing about when your opponent moves fast is it actually takes away from your time in a way, because you're used to thinking while your opponent is thinking. And so, now I have to do all my thinking on my own time if he's moving quickly. So I have even less time. And he keeps up the pressure by moving quickly through the next part himself. So he maintains that time edge. Let's see. Oh, just to point out some ideas here. The chess engine does not have any great ways to break through. It just wants to play kind of standing still moves, like maybe rook f to d1. More support for the center and just kind of sitting on the position and maintaining that advantage. It doesn't show any great way to break through. So it's definitely a tough position to play. Anyway, I went knight e2. And he didn't play knight b6. He's continuing his practice of moving quickly and not necessarily looking for the best move, but content to just survive and try and get me in time trouble. So he went rook g8. And so I went queen e3. Queen f3 might have been a better move here. I definitely wanted to get out of the glare of his rook there, and I thought lining up on this pawn again might be useful. And I'm also opening up a square for my knight to come in. But the queen on f3 also opens up a square for the knight, and it provides some defense for the d-pawn, so that's why it might be a little better in this case. Once again, he doesn't play knight b6. He plays e6 here. So trying to undermine the center that way. And now I go knight to g3, just continuing my plan of bringing the knight over to the king's side. The chess engine here is recommending just taking that pawn. Pawn takes, f takes. Yeah, I didn't want to play this. This kind of straightens out his pawns. And rook f to d1. It thinks this actually keeps the maximum advantage for white. You know, the way I'm playing it, it's, in this position, instead of taking and bringing the rook over, which makes sense. I mean, that pins the knight, opens up the d file and pins the knight, and maybe I can get some pressure going there. So that's definitely a way to play. The way I played knight to b6, still keeping an advantage to white. I've maintained the advantage. It's just that it's no longer that +1 advantage that I had from the beginning. It's some fractional advantage, more like a typical opening kind of advantage. So after knight to b6, he takes. Oh, now, I'm sorry. After I played knight to g3, he finally plays knight to b6. And with this extra pressure on the d-pawn, I have to trade it off. I didn't see any way to avoid it. So I take and he takes. So we get this situation anyway, and I play rook f to d1, which is just a logical move, putting the rook on the open file. But now he's got one step ahead, right? He got his knight to b6, and now it comes into d5. Whereas if I had taken first instead of playing knight to g3, instead of that move, if I had taken first, I would have gotten this rook here before he had a chance to move his knight, and so he wouldn't have been able to do that maneuver. So that's why this is a little bit better for black than the other line. But white still has, like I said, a slight edge. I go queen f3. Notice he can't take the bishop because the knight is pinned, but he just supports the knight there. He plays c6. And I go knight h5 here, angling for some tactics around the king. And he goes queen to h4, an interesting way to try and defend. Took me a while to, even though I'm in time trouble, he's still posing problems for me. He's hitting the bishop here. I don't want to trade. And he's putting pressure on the knight, but the knight is defended by the queen at the moment. So I have time to play bishop g3, kicking the queen. Queen dropped back to g5. Now I played rook to c4. So lifting my rook, getting ready to come over to the king's side to join in the attack, and also supporting bishop to h4. So once again, I think I found a good move here, a way to keep up the pressure, but it is taking time on my clock, and we're up to move 31. So he drops his queen back to g6, so getting out of the way of the bishop. I went rook to e1 here. I wanted to make sure this pawn was securely defended. He has ideas of pushing this pawn forward. I guess that doesn't work here. So I'm not sure rook e1 was the most accurate move. But the rook was no longer doing anything on the d file. I guess that's the point. And so I'm just trying to find a way to get it into the game. So once again, keeping that kind of advantage that I talked about, just a slight edge, and keeping up the pressure. He played b5 here. And right here on move 33, I make a terrible blunder. So this is the move, I just wanted to keep that rook active. And so I played the move rook to c2 with the idea of bringing it over here and maybe doubling on the e-file. And then maybe I'll have some tactics against this pawn over here. So this is something that I would have ruled out if I had done the blunder check. So here, you can do the blunder check. Say you're thinking about the move rook c2. Is that a blunder, or is that a safe move? Okay, well, I already told you it was a blunder, but pause the video if you want time to find out exactly, if you want to think about exactly what the mistake is and how black punishes it. I'm giving the answer away now. I played rook to c2, and now he did not play the right answer here. He could have just played f4. Move this pawn forward, opening up the view of the queen on the rook, which is undefended on c2, and at the same time hitting the bishop. And that just loses a piece. I have to move the rook, and he takes the bishop. So a horrible blunder. And fortunately for me, he did not play that move. I played rook c2. And, well, he's still following this policy I described earlier, where he's playing quickly. He's playing the moves that he wants to play, that he thinks don't get him into trouble. And trying to keep up the pressure on me. But the idea of keeping up the pressure on someone is you also have to look for those blunders they make and take advantage of them. Otherwise, that pressure is not amounting to anything. Anyway, so he played c5. And then I went to e2 with my rook, and everything is back in order again. I'm back to that slight advantage again. He pushes on with c4. And now I go bishop h4, which is a good move, keeping the edge, but there actually was a much better move right here. So yeah, the move that Chess Engine is recommending at this point, you could pause to think about it if you want to. Yeah, I'm going to give the answer away. It's certainly a move I considered. It's knight to f6, check, is a good move here. And if he takes, oh, cancel that. The engine line was this: knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes. I didn't see this move here. This is really good. Yeah, it's I've given up a pawn and I've exchanged off a knight, but I've penetrated with my rook. I'm pinning his bishop, and I'm also attacking over here. And so this is a really strong edge for white. That would be winning. So let's see, what else could he do after knight f6 check? His other option would be to move the king. Actually, let me turn on the engine for a second here, because I don't think I looked at this. I want to get the right answer. I don't want to give away something. So after that, okay, it says knight takes d5 is best. Pawn takes, and I get a passed pawn. Yeah, and the engine gives e6 right away as the next move. So that's the knight f6 move is the best move in this position. And I didn't spot that, but we haven't made the time control. We're still on move 34 here. I've got 6 moves to make the time control. And I saw this move, bishop h4, and this this introduces some threats of coming to f6. And let's see, he played knight b4. He had an idea here of getting his knight to a good square. Actually, the problem with this bishop h4 move is it's just a little too slow. Instead of knight b4 here, he could have played c3, and that's a move that turns the tables. c3 actually gives the advantage to black. So actually, what I said about this bishop move is wrong. It doesn't keep the edge. It keeps the edge the way the game went. But if he had found the c3 move once again, this would be pretty good for black. If I don't take it, then let's see. There's this line here, g3, just defending the bishop. C takes b2. Rook takes. And then, I'm sorry, it's not about defending the bishop. It's about giving some squares for the queen, I think. And the queen gets chased away by the rook. So the knight of the rook coming to c3 is a dangerous combination. That's the other problem. And the same thing happens if I take here right away. This rook takes c3. He starts to chase my queen around. And so this gives a slight edge to black. Not like it's winning. But anyway, he didn't find that c3 move. He played knight to b4. So once again, I'm back to where I have an advantage. Let's see. And I play the move I'd been planning here. I played bishop to f6. And I think he's losing material here. I don't see any way to hold this together, and the chess engine didn't find it either. He throws in this move, knight d3. Played rook d1. He goes rook to c7. That's his idea, is to defend along the 7th rank. If he takes the bishop, then I'll take back with the knight. That's a check, and I'll be picking up the exchange. I'll be winning that rook. But this also wins the exchange. I take his bishop. Let's see, he took with the rook on the g file, and then I take here. And then right here also, We're on move 38 at this point, so I am moving pretty quickly. I have to make these decisions before my clock time runs out. But right here, also knight f6 check would be a good move, driving the king to the back rank. There's no rook to. They can't give up the exchange here, and then the queen potentially can come into the back rank. Let's see. The line went rook c2. I'm not sure why. Rook c to d7, and then giving up the exchange this way. Okay. I thought there was a line also where the queen jumps into the back rank. But anyway, that's the best play according to the chess engine. Let's go back to the game. I took here, he took, and I took with the knight. So, and he took here. And now it's move 39, the last move before the time control. And, I forget how much time I had, but not a whole lot. And I decided here to try and simplify things. I said to myself, how about if I just give back the exchange but win this pawn and go into an endgame a pawn up? And, of course, this is a little bit tricky because he's got this pressure on my g-pawn. So my queen is tied down to defending the g-pawn. But what I calculated in the small amount of time that I devoted to calculating was that I could take his knight, he takes back with the pawn, and then I could play rook here and take back with a rook. So that's what I went for. I just thought, I needed, because of the time pressure, I needed to try and simplify things, and life is always going to be difficult with this knight here, and with the pressure on the combination of the knight here near my king and the pressure on the g-pawn seemed like this would be the simplest way to deal with it. Now the chess engine says the best move here is king f1, and just play this position, king f1, queen to f7, and b3. Try and undermine the knight that way. And that's a way to play it. And if I had more time, I might have played that way. Certainly, that b3 idea is something that occurred to me. I'm not sure the purpose of king f1, honestly. Anyway, let's erase this arrow. What I played was rook takes d3, and this pretty much makes the game even. I was actually, after winning the exchange, I was actually winning once again. So he took with the pawn. And then I played rook d2. This is my idea. And now he goes queen g5. This is the move I missed, and this is why I'm not keeping any kind of advantage. He's putting the pressure on the rook. If I drop the rook back, then he can just push this pawn forward and hold on to it. And he's still got this pressure on the g file. So I don't think this helps any. All this is about even. I played rook takes d3, and the problem with this queen g5 move is that now the queen gets active. He comes in here with the check. And let's see, I decided to defend the back rank with the rook, but then black starts picking up pawns. So black is not only, let's see, well, black has grabbed one pawn, but he's threatening another. But I have a move here that threatens two pawns as well. Although he can take here. He takes here on a2, and that actually defends both the pawns I was attacking. And I play a somewhat risky move here. The chess engine says the safest way to an equal game is to play like this, to play with f4, just blockading these pawns over here. And I was a little bit worried about playing this way because of because these connected pass pawns look really dangerous to me. But let's see, he starts pushing these pawns. I can bring my rook in. I can keep pushing, and then I can trade, and then come in with the check, and then go for a perpetual check. And that's the drawing idea here. I have no more chance of winning. The best I can hope for is a draw here. I went with a different plan. I went rook d6, and the engine now likes black a little better. It thinks that black is +1 advantage. Although it's not clear if that's winning or not, because with the queens on the board and his king exposed, the +1 advantage just means he has an extra pawn. Doesn't mean that that he's got a way to win with it. And I think it would be very difficult for black to win. But black has a lot of time on the clock. So anyway, he keeps playing. Queen a1 check, king h2. Well, it's certainly a very lively position. It's nowhere near dead. So, and he can keep grabbing stuff, right? That check picked up another pawn. And yet another pawn. And so I was starting to feel a little discouraged at this point. Takes here. But after this, I finally get one of my pawns back. I take here. And so he's 2 pawns up. But his king is somewhat exposed. I couldn't take the a pawn, which I would really prefer to take because I needed to defend over here on g2. Let's see, he goes queen g3 check. I go back, goes cancel that. I went to h1, goes queen h5, queen g5. And let's see, I went queen back to c2. I want to get the queen out of the way so my rook can threaten these pawns. And he went rook to e7. So at this point, the evaluation changes once again. He could keep trying with b4. And this is the best play according to the chess engine, b4, and rook takes a6. So this would be a position where he's 1 pawn up. And it's... but these pawns are kind of weak, and his king is a bit exposed. So the engine evaluation is still +1, but that just means they can't find a way to promote that pawn. So probably, I would say, a draw anyway. But this is a quicker draw because after this exchange, I can just pretty much check his king forever. Let's see, he went king g7, and he has these connected pawns over here, so maybe he's hoping to promote them, but there's no good way to do it. Let's see, I went queen g4 check, interposed with queen g5, brought my queen back here with another check, and he played king to f6. I went to d6 check, and he went to f5, king to f5. And I could keep checking here, but I thought it was safer to grab one of these pawns because now these pawns don't support each other. They won't march down by themselves. And I didn't see how he could make progress from here, and I thought I could continue checking. Let's see, he tried king e4. And the engine evaluation gives all of these positions as 0, 0, 0. Let's see, I went with this check, queen c6. He went king to d3. I went queen f3 check. He went king to c2. I went queen e2 check. There's one more trick. If he goes to the back rank and I try to deliver a check on the back rank, say king here and I check here, then he can bring the queen this way and force a trade and win with the outside pass pawn. So that's the last trick that black has here. But yeah, I don't allow that. I don't go for any checks on the back rank. So he goes king b3 here. I went queen d1 check, checking on the diagonal, so there's no interpose with his queen. Goes king to b2, and I check from this diagonal. And then he goes king to a3. I check here. He goes king a4. I check from c2. And at this point, he offered to draw. There's no way the king is going to escape the checks, and no way that he can make progress with that pawn, which I guess was the idea of that king march. So my final game was drawn, and I did lose a few rating points, but not too many. So it was an okay tournament for me. This is a long video, so I'm going to do a separate video, one more video, where I just talk about my the game overall, the tournament overall, how my opponents fared, and any conclusions I may have drawn from the tournament. So see you guys then. Bye-bye.